Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So in about 2 minutes, we will start our webinar on mental health with our speaker, Dr. Garcia. So please let's all prepare ourselves for this webinar. So we still have 2 more minutes while waiting for others to come into our session this afternoon. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon po. This is Christian Gloria.
Yes, sir. We recognized you, sir.
It's good to see you po. Thank you for inviting me.
So our
Good
speaker
afternoon.
is already on board. So in a few minutes or minute, we will be starting our webinar session on mental health with Dr. Garcia as our speaker this afternoon. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on mental health with the title of Flourishing Through Adversity. How can stress and emotional experiences make us stronger? This webinar will focus on mental health and positive psychology. Hopefully that these two fields will be understood by us and through this brief and comprehensive overview, so that at the end of this program, we may be able to develop or find strategies by which we can maintain ourselves healthy as individual as well as our organizations. So as educators and guidance counselors as well as students, we have to find valuable strategies and insights related to mental health services, in which, through these insights, we can therefore develop our respective program in each of our institutions, so that we can implement this for the good and welfare of our students. Without much ado, let us start our program with a prayer to be led to us by Dr. Virginia is Beltran, the God focal person and at the same time VP for Academic Affairs of the Palumpon Institute of Technology. This will be followed by the Pambansang Awit ng Pilipinas. Ma'am Beltran.
Yes, sir. Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty and ever-living God, we thank you for the gift of life and for all the blessings and opportunities that have enabled us to survive and persevere in these trying times. Over the course of the past months, we acknowledge and are grateful for your presence in and through all activities, our pains and joys, our failures and successes. We acknowledge you in the care, compassion, and generosity of friends, relatives, and colleagues with whom we continue this journey. As we go through this pandemic, protect us and our families and all our frontliners so that we can overcome the tests and come out victorious. We implore you to bless our resource persons so that we will be guided, especially that we are undergoing a lot of new processes that challenge the different aspects in our life. Bless the organizers, the CHED Region 8 officials and committees, and give them the grace they need to sustain their responsibilities. Bless the participants, the representatives from the different institutions, so that we will make the best out of this opportunity and become mentally healthy and productive. Lord, make us worthy instruments of spreading your word and become witnesses of your hope, love, and joy as we carry out our duties and responsibilities as managers, educators, guidance counselors, parents, or students. Bless our efforts, plans, and decisions and activities so that all that we do will be in accordance with your holy will. May we glorify you more and more as we await the coming of your kingdom on earth. All these we ask from you through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Ay, ang pag-ibig, para sa silanganan, ay ang puso sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Ang tuyang ka na mag-ibig, sa pag-ibig, di ka masisi, sa dagat at pagsisipot at sa langit mo tumawin ang tulad, at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang gusto ng wagaw at dito may nanatiling.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Beltran, and also for our hosts, Sir Neil from Chedro, to welcome our participants and also to give her opening message. Let us all welcome Engineer Socorro Q. Ramos, the Chief Education Program Specialist of the CHED Region 8. Ma'am Ramos.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Thank you for joining our webinar today. I hope we're all feeling good despite the situation we are in now. When the general community quarantine was imposed here in Region 8 last March 2020, I believe you and I have had apprehensions, but I think nobody had an idea on what it means, except that we need to follow the work from home order, the stay at home order. COVID-19 pandemic means bawal lumabas. We had no choice. Whether we like it or not, we have to stay home, which means fewer, if not absence, of social interactions. The COVID-19 situation is a stressful time for all of us, not only because of the fear of acquiring the virus ourselves, fear for our loved ones, but more because of the forced isolation imposed upon us. The weeks became months, and at least 2 or 3 months under this forced confinement, despite the newfound or resurrected habits or recreations to occupy our free time, we may still have felt bored. The actions necessary to reduce the spread of COVID-19, such as social distancing, made us feel isolated, resulting to increased stress and anxiety. In addition, with the passage of time, the Region 8 COVID-19 statistics keeps on rising. On March 18, 2020, there was a zero COVID-19 case in Tacloban City in Region 8. But 5 months later, as of August 17, 2020, DOS Region 8 reported there were already 687 active cases. On August 17 alone, there were 95 new positive cases. The truth, we are all at risk. No one is safe. This adds to our stress, to our anxiety, to our fear. We start to feel the psychological impact of COVID-19. We felt different levels of loneliness, of boredom, of stress, and fear. Maybe to some, even depression we have something. Coping with stress in a healthy way will make us, the people we care about, and our communities stronger. No one is safe until everyone is safe. We are all in this together. The COVID-19 pandemic has alarming consequences to the individual and collective health and emotional social functioning. The implementation of a nationwide lockdown disrupts our day-to-day lives. It caused significant disruption to our daily routines at home and at our workplace, our social interactions in general. To students, it caused significant disruption to daily routines like postponement of examinations, suspension of classes. There was no more rampahan or la mierda or happenings with friends. The COVID-19 pandemic is having far-reaching effects into the mental well-being of each and every one of us in this society without exemption. Mental health conditions like depression, anxiety affect a person's thinking, feeling, mood, or behavior in a way that influences one's ability to deal with others and function as a. It may also affect how we handle stress, relate to, relate to others, make choices and decisions during an emergency. This condition may be short-term or long-lasting, since stress, depression, irritability, insomnia, fear, frustration, boredom may even persist after the quarantine is lifted. But life must go on. The World Health Organization says the virus will stay with us, just like other viruses it will stay. But how to live with it, how to transition to the new normal should be our concern. One healthy way to cope with stress is to take care of our mental health. Taking care of our mental health will help us think clearly and react to urgent needs to protect ourselves, our family. With the conduct of this webinar on mental health, the Chair Regional Office 8 hopes that we will be more equipped with the necessary self-help techniques for us to be more prepared to face the stressors brought about by this pandemic situation. Good day, everyone. Let's all stay healthy and safe. Enjoy and get the most out of our webinar today. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Engineer Ramos. Okay, we are now moving forward, but prior to our lecture proper of Dr. Gloria, let us please acknowledge the participants for this webinar. We'd like to request Mr. Neil Dolor from the CHED Region 8. So we have flashed the list of participants by schools within and outside the Region 8. So we have the Asian Development Foundation College, Tikas Karungan, Christ the King College. Then we have the Aboyog. Nawala. Okay, so those are the schools participating this afternoon's webinar on mental health. Flourishing through adversity. How can stress and emotional experiences make us stronger? To introduce our guest speaker for this afternoon's webinar, we'd like to call in Dr. Gabino Pipitilos, Supervising Education Program Specialist, CHED Region 8.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to introduce to you our resource speaker, born and raised in Valenzuela, Metro Manila, who we have the honor to learn from in today's webinar on mental health. Our speaker is an expert in health education who has a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, major in health promotion and fitness, and a master's degree specializing in health education, both obtained from the University of Texas in Austin in 2005 and 2009 respectively. In 2013, from the same institution, he obtained his Doctor of Philosophy, specializing in health behavior and health education, where he also had his early trainings in the field of research under the Department of Kinesiology and Health Education. He's also a certified health education specialist since 2010, as issued and certified by the National Commission for Health Education Credentialing. He's currently the department chair for the Department of Public Health in Hawaii, Pacific University, where he also serves as associate professor since 2012. He's also the vice chair for the faculty assembly of the College of Health and Society in the same university. At present, he's a Balik scientist under the Balik Scientist Program of the Department of Science and Technology and the Philippine Council for Health Research and Development, while serving as a consultant for the Commission on Higher Education, focusing on community health program, community health, mental health care, and health promotion program, among others. He's also an adjunct professor, consultant, and co-researcher at the Angeles University Foundation in Angeles, Pampanga, where he worked on the project Mental Health Across Ages, Identifying Issues and Trends in Pampanga, which aims to collect baseline data and study the mental health status of Pampanga residents across the age group, including children, adolescents, and adults. He's a professional member of certain distinguished associations in the Philippines, such as the National Research Council of the Philippines or NRCP, and Pambansang Samahan sa Psikolohiyang Pilipino or the National Association of Filipino Psychology. He served as a conference chair from 2015 to 2017, vice president from 2016 to 2017, and president from 2017 to 2018 for the Hawaii Public Health Association, and is also a professional member of the American Public Health Association. Our speaker has authored and co-authored several publications and researches on studies centering on mental health and distinct coverage on positive emotions, stress, anxiety, depression, as well as adaptation and coping mechanisms. He continues to support and work on grant-funded researches, including partnerships with various institutions here and abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, to share his expertise with us today, please join me in welcoming our distinguished resource person, Dr. Christian T. Gloria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gabino Petilos. That was, I have to say, the best introduction I have ever heard. It is such an honor. That was exhausting listening to everything that I've done over the years. And so thank you again, especially not only to Dr. Gabs Petilos, but also to Father Nicolo Florencio for inviting me to be here today with such a large and great audience. I want to, before I start, especially thank CHED Regional 8 office officials, as well as Sir Manolo Loretta, Dr. Virginia Beltran, Engineer Socorro Ramos, as well as Dr. George Colorado. And I'd also like to thank all of the participants today for your attention and for inviting me to speak to you and share a little bit about my work. So I'd like to especially thank the faculty, the guidance counselors, the advocates, students, as well as the staff. I think this has to be one of the largest audiences that I've ever had to present to. No pressure. Excuse me, I apologize a little bit in advance. I'm coughing a little bit. It's because of my asthma. Having to wear masks all day long is really aggravating my asthma. I promise it's not COVID. I do want to also especially thank Engineer Socorro Ramos for really laying out all of the challenges that we are facing, not only in the Philippines, here in the US, but also all over the world. We've never seen challenges and adversities like this in generations. And so aside from the pandemic crisis followed by the economic crisis, we are now expecting what we are already beginning to experience, a mental health crisis as a result of the chronic stress, the anxiety, the sense of helplessness and hopelessness, and not knowing when all of this will be over and when we could return back to normal. It's very likely that we might have to truly wait until a vaccine arrives that's going to help us be able to resist becoming sick from COVID and allow us to go back to normal. And so hopefully, I pray that we will get a vaccine sooner than later. I know that I've been carefully watching the Philippines. I was there actually in March in Manila as a balik scientist, right when the pandemic began to really explode in the Philippines. And around mid-March, I was ordered to return to Hawaii, where I live and work full-time as a faculty at Hawaii Pacific University. And I never would have expected that it would become as big of a problem as it is now. So my heart is breaking for the Filipino community. The Philippines is one of the hardest struck by COVID, along with the other problems related to the COVID and economic pandemic and the crisis. And so just like what Engineer Socorro Ramos said, we have to live with this, unfortunately, and we have to figure out different ways, strategies of how we can maintain our mental health, our happiness, as well as healthiness, because this is not going anytime soon, and we have a lot of challenges to face. So give me a second here. Let me do a share screen. If anybody have any questions as I go through my lecture, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask your questions or say your comments. Or if you'd like, I'm also paying attention to the chat box. So I'll be reading any comments that I see. Okay, just give me 1 second here. And you are able to see the PowerPoint slides? Okay, great. Give me 1 second here. I will begin shortly. Okay. All right. So again, the title of my presentation is Flourishing Through Adversity. It's a research area that I've been working on for the last about 15 years, since I used to be a PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin. The main purpose of my work is really based in psychology, in positive psychology. Instead of studying the negative factors that contribute to mental health problems as well as physical health problems, I'm actually studying the other side of that table, where I'm looking at what are the positive factors that can help people successfully fight against adversity, against stress, and actually be able to thrive as a result of having to live through all of those adversities. So it reminds me of my childhood in the Philippines, living in not necessarily the easiest conditions and having faced many struggles and challenges. There are things that we can do, employ in school system, employ into individuals, into families, communities, as well as the education system, to give them the sources, the tools, the resources, the instruments, and the characteristics that they need so that they can successfully fight stress and all of the negative repercussions of that, so that they can be successful both physically, psychologically, as well as in terms of flourishing in life later on. Okay. So I'm very interested in looking at people who live in very difficult situations. And so in that little corner there on the slide, you see sort of like a war zone with like a mother and a child. And so my area of work is studying what can we do for them living in very difficult situations, so we can help them successfully get through that stressful condition and be able to move on to much healthier and much more successful lives. Okay. So today, for the next hour, I'll share with you a little bit about my research, particularly about stress and emotions, and how emotions, the experience of our emotions, can lead to certain outcomes, both negative and positive. And in the middle of this presentation, we're going to do a short little exercise that's going to have me give you an opportunity to measure your own score of positive and negative emotional experiences. How you score can help us predict what you will be like in the future in terms of your health outcomes. And so towards the middle part of this presentation, I'd like for you to grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, and I'm going to make you do a very quick 20 question item quiz that's going to help me score your positivity ratio, and I'll explain to you what that means later on. Okay. Excuse me. Just a little background, because everybody wants to know where I come from, especially when I do my presentations in the Philippines. I grew up, as Dr. Gabino said, I grew up in Valenzuela, Metro Manila, but I was actually born in Malolos, Bulacan. I lived here in my community for about 12 years before moving to the United States. We first migrated to California, lived in Los Angeles, and then moved to Austin, Texas, where I ended up studying for my bachelor's, master's, and PhD in health education and health promotion. For my bachelor's, I studied exercise science. For my master's, I studied nutrition and the built environment. And then for my PhD, I decided to study mental health and resilience. And after finishing my PhD at the University of Texas at Austin, I decided to move to Hawaii so I could be as close as possible to the Philippines and Asia, where I would have dreamed to do my work and be able to go back home, which I began to do, especially in the last couple of years. Since you'll see there where Hawaii is compared to the Philippines, it's about an 11-hour drive, or not drive, 11-hour flight nonstop through Philippine Airlines. So it's a long flight coming from the middle of the Pacific. Hawaii actually has a lot of Filipino communities. The Filipino community is the second largest ethnic group in the state of Hawaii. The Japanese outnumbered us, but we are the second largest group in the Philippines. So it feels a lot like home in Hawaii because there are many Filipinos, and most of the Filipinos are Ilocano. I had been away in the US for the last 25 years, and I only started returning to the Philippines about 3 years ago in 2017. One of the reasons why I decided to go back to the Philippines as a faculty now at Hawaii Pacific University was to actually develop study abroad and exchange programs for students and faculty between Hawaii and the Philippines. Many of my students are Filipino Americans. They've never been to the Philippines. They don't know anything about the Filipino identity. So it's become a personal mission of mine to bridge the gap between the Philippines and Hawaii and be able to create programs with many universities across the Philippines so we can have exchange programs for both our students and faculty. So for any of the colleges, the schools in Region 8, if you're interested in building a partnership, an exchange program with Hawaii Pacific University, please let me know, and I would love to begin having that conversations. And so over the last just 2 to 3 years, I had been all over Manila, up in Baguio, all the way down to Davao, been to Tacloban about a year and a half ago, Iloilo, Dumaguete just recently to visit Suman University. And I had spent many of my time in Angeles, Pampanga, because I'm also serving as a co-researcher with a project there in studying mental health among the Kapampangans in the province of Pampanga, along with Angeles University Foundation. And so as a Balik scientist, I began my Blick scientist work about 2 years ago. Again, my work is really just to be a co-researcher for a CHED-funded project with Angeles University Foundation. The project is titled Mental Health Across Ages, studying the trends in Pampanga, where we collected baseline data and studied the mental health of the residents of Pampanga, from children to school-age children and adolescents, as well as adults. And we actually just finished our data collection last year around November, and we presented it recently to the Philippine Association, the Psychological Association of the Philippines last year. And so when I was a Blick scientist last year, this is the work that I had to do. And I'm planning to continue to work as a Blick scientist this year. Unfortunately, COVID got in the way a little bit, and so I'm waiting for the DOST and PCHRD to let me know what kind of work I can do, at least remotely here from Hawaii, and hopefully be able to go back to the Philippines soon so I can do my work on the ground. And this is the project that was funded by CHED, that was led by Dr. Olga Tulabut over at Angeles University Foundation. And you'll see my name highlighted there. And I'm just a small little person contributing as a consultant and co-researcher to this research project that began a couple of years ago and just ended last year. And this is the research team from Angeles University Foundation, where we had been collecting data in Pampanga. Okay, and over the years, I've also done many presentations, and these are photos from Angeles University Foundation, from De La Salle, Ateneo, UP Manila, let's see, Holy Angel University, Salaman University, and a variety of other universities across the country over the last couple of years. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to visit your universities and schools sooner than later. All right, and so down to my presentation now that I'm done with a little bit of a background. And so again, I wanted to point out to the audience, because I know we have quite a diverse group among our participants today. I wanted to explain very quickly the difference between traditional psychology and a positive psychology. So again, traditional psychology is about studying the negative factors, that basically, what are the things that make people sick, that make them anxious or have depression disorders. And on the other hand, what is positive psychology? These are the positive factors that help people thrive and flourish and be successful and do well in life, despite having to live through stressful conditions. And I'm imagining, for example, my own childhood in Manila, which is very challenging for many, many years as a child there. And so the pictures that you see there are photos of Martin Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi. These are the founders of the positive psychology field that began about 20 to 30 years ago. So again, the study is about what are the things that can help people maintain mental health and optimize their mental health despite having to live with stressful life conditions, okay? And whenever I do any kind of presentation in the Philippines, I always want to remind people of something as simple as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That before we can even look at mental health, like self-actualization or having a high sense of self-esteem, especially during the last couple of months during this pandemic, we have to really make sure that we work together, individually, our families, our school systems, our communities, along with our faith organizations and government organizations. We have to work together and make sure that our individuals, our students, our employees, our community members are meeting their basic needs. Something as simple as food, air, shelter, sense of security. These are essential that we have to be able to meet before we can even talk about mental health. It's really difficult for us to try to provide and offer mental health services if people are hungry, if people don't have shelter, if people don't have a sense of safety. So we have to really work together and make sure, again, that we meet these very basic needs, and then we can talk about how we can help with improve mental health among our communities, okay? So a lot of the things that I'll be presenting today and the recommendations that I'll be sharing are really the things that you can do in your general life. It doesn't have to be through this COVID crisis, but especially through this the last couple of months of extraordinary challenges and adversities. The recommendations and strategies that I'll be sharing with you today are going to be just as useful, especially now at a time where we're so limited in what we can do, especially when we are locked down or quarantined and not able to go out there and socialize and see our friends and be able to do things that we normally do and enjoy. Okay. So according to the field of positive psychology, there are three main ingredients to a happy life, to a mentally healthy life. And these are a pleasant life, an engaged life, and a meaningful life. For the presentation today, I'm focusing primarily on the pleasant life. Okay, the engaged life is just being able to be an active player in all of the decisions you make in life. And a meaningful life is all about having a strong sense of purpose. And so we'll save those presentations for another day. But for today, we will focus mainly on a pleasant life, really the experiencing of positive emotions as compared to the experiences of negative emotions. Excuse me. So as you might imagine, especially over the last couple of months, as we fight and struggle against the COVID pandemic, and as well as the lockdowns, the loss of employment, seeing our friends and family become ill and perhaps even perish from the disease. All of us, not only in the Philippines, not only in the US, but all over the world, we are experiencing extremely high levels of negative emotions like fear, anger, helplessness, anxiety, depression, sadness, you name it. And I'll show you the long list later on. So the problem right now is we're experiencing so many negative emotions, but very few positive emotions. If this happens all the time, every day, chronically for months, like we are experiencing now with COVID, it's increasing our chances of developing mental health problems, just like anxiety disorders, depression disorders, which could then translate and contribute to physical health problems like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and other problems. Okay, so we have to figure out how can we maintain a pleasant life even in the midst of the struggles and challenges of this COVID pandemic. Okay, so much of my research was based on the broaden build theory of positive emotions developed by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. That's her right there. And so let's do a quick exercise here real quick. Think about negative emotions. Think about feeling anger, shame, contempt, disgust, fear, feeling chronic stress, anxiety, depression. When you feel these kinds of negative emotions, how do you feel and how does your body react? Okay. Normally, these are the kind of things that I do face to face in an in-person classroom, and so it's interesting having to do this virtually by Zoom. I'm not going to be able to hear you respond with your answers. So I'll just pretend that I hear you and I'll continue to move on. So when you feel these kinds of negative emotions, your body will react as well. It's going to trigger what we call the fight or flight response. Because you're feeling threatened by COVID, you're feeling threatened by not being able to go to work or not being able to go to school or see your friends and family. So we're always on fight or flight response. On short terms, the fight or flight response can be very healthy because it makes us stronger, it makes us faster, it allows us to think very quickly and make decisions very quickly that normally will help us survive and help us fight whatever it is that stresses us out. Okay? It helps us focus on the problem and deal with it right away. The problem with the COVID pandemic is the problem is everywhere, and at the same time, it's invisible. We don't know where it is, and we feel like we are constantly at risk of becoming sick, as well as our loved ones. And so this forces us to be on fight or flight mode every day, all day long, and now for about 4 to 5, 6 months. Okay, so it's becoming chronic stress. On the short term, again, it's good. But long term, it can become dangerous. We can go through what we call a stress overload that can actually cut back as much as 10 years out of our lifespan. So obviously, we don't want that. Okay. On the other hand, when we feel positive emotions, for example, joy, gratitude, serenity, peace, love, interest, hope, happiness, When we feel these things, what do you think are the kind of bodily reactions that we go through? Okay. And so normally what we go through is the broadening and the building effect that Barbara Fredrickson has termed. And basically it's the opposite of the fight or flight response, where we become calmer, we feel cooler, we're not so focused on the problem, we're much more open-minded, we're more likely to go out and talk to our friends and families, build relationships, strengthen those relationships, create new relationships, go out and explore the world, take on a new adventure. So it forces us to broaden our cognitive capacity as well as our social network. So the broadening effect, whenever you feel positive emotions, you go through all of these experiences that make us smarter, that make us stronger, that it strengthen our relationships as well as build our resources that we can use to help fight off stress in the future. Okay. So later on, I'll show to you what I mean by the undoing effect and the moderating effect when we feel positive emotions. And long story short, when we feel positive emotions all the time, it's going to make us smarter, it's going to make us stronger, it's going to make us happier, and it's going to make us more resilient and allow us to bounce back from our problems and from stress much more quickly. And we actually end up growing from those experiences. So we continue to become stronger, we continue to become happier, and we continue to become healthier. Okay. And so the key here is to maximize our experiences of positive emotions. It's easier said than done, especially through this COVID pandemic. Okay. As a little diagram, what happens according to the model is whenever you feel any kind of positive emotions, and I'll explain to you the long list of positive emotions that we test, it's going to allow you to broaden your thinking, your activities, your relationship with other people. So it's again going to make you smarter and stronger. These resources, in terms of your intelligence, in terms of your social network, and your ability to solve problems, these will build on and continue to make you stronger, enhance your health and survival. And as a result of that, it's going to continue to spiral and allow you to experience positive emotions much more easily and more frequently. So that's the goal there. So if you think about, for example, your normal day, especially during the last couple of months, how often do you feel positive emotions? And how often do you feel negative emotions? If you want to maintain good health, both mentally and physically, we need to experience more positive emotions than negative ones. The positive has to outweigh the negative. And we have to figure out, where do we draw the line? And we'll figure that out in 1 second here. Okay. Some of the things that we realized when we studied the experiences of positive emotions is that there are two main effects: an undoing effect and a moderating effect. So on this diagram here, you'll see the cardiovascular reactivity, let's say like your blood pressure. And here's your baseline here, the horizontal black line. When you experience a stressful situation, normally our blood pressure will go up, okay? And if you follow the black line here, over time, you will recover and go back to baseline, okay? For some people, that's faster, and for other people, that might be a slower process. But what we learned is when you experience stress and you do something that's going to allow you to experience positive emotions at that moment, you can follow this blue line here where it shows that you will actually recover much more quickly. You'll return to baseline more quickly than if you don't experience positive emotions. So when you experience any kind of stress, if you experience any kind of negative emotions, try to find a way to experience positive emotions. It could be as simple as watching something funny on TV, a good TV show online, or calling your friends and family, talking about your problems, laughing about it. Something as simple as that, experiencing those positive emotions, can allow you to recover much more quickly. And so that's the goal, to recover as quickly as possible so you can maintain your psychological as well as your physical health. So that's the undoing effect. The other effect is what we call the moderating effect. As you can see here, similar graph, but this one here shows that if you are the kind of person that experience positive emotions frequently, you become a stronger person. So instead of experiencing the effective stress all the way up here, you're actually only experiencing the stress partially. So you're only partially affected by it, which will then allow you to recover more quickly. So these are the two effects of the undoing as well as the moderating effect for people who experience positive emotions all the time. And so experiencing positive emotions, it's not just something that you feel good at the moment, it's actually very healthy and make us stronger in the long run that can last for a long time. So very quickly, let's do the self-test here. I'd like for everybody in the audience, when you have a chance, grab a piece of paper as well as something to write with. I'm going to show you this self-test right here. And so I want you to think about the last 24 hours of your life. So it's about 2, 3 o'clock right now. So think about the last 24 hours from 2 o'clock yesterday all the way to 2 o'clock today. Think about all of the experiences that you've gone through. And as you think about that, I'd like for you to do this quiz. Okay, so on your piece of paper, I'd like for you to write 1 through 20. And I want you, for example, to rate what is the most amused, fun-loving, or silly that you felt over the last 24 hours. And you're going to rate that from 0, not at all experience, or extremely experienced. Okay? So I'll give you a few minutes to complete items 1 through 10. These blue items are the positive emotions like amused, fun-loving, or silly, awe, appreciative, optimism, happiness, serene, peacefulness, love. So I'd like for you to take a couple of minutes to just rate again what you have experienced over the last 24 hours and rate it from 0, not at all, to 4, extremely. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to fill out items number 1 through 10, and then I'll move on to items 11 through 20. I will then scroll a little bit so you can see some of the other items. The red font are the negative emotions. Okay, I'll give 1 more minute and then we'll move on to scoring it. Okay, I see that that we might have some chat messages, but unfortunately, I'm unable to see it from my screen. So if anybody would like to read them to me so that I could hear, I would appreciate it. I apologize, I'm unable to see the chat box from my computer. Okay. And I will also email this, not only the PowerPoint slides, but also this instrument to Dr. Gabino, so he could then share this with everybody in the audience if you'd like to have this instrument. I'll also show you that this instrument is available online, and I'll show you the link later on, okay? So now that you've completed and rated your positive as well as negative emotions over the last 24 hours, let's do a little calculation, a little math to figure out what your score is. And then I'll explain what your score means and how that translates to your health outcomes later on. Okay. So what I'd like for you to do is count on items number 1 through 10. How many did you rate as 2 or higher? So just count them. How many did you rate 2 or higher on items 1 through 10? Once you have that count, you can just write that number on the side. That's your positive emotions count. And then for for items 11 through 20, I want you to count how many did you rate as 1 or higher. So again, just count from 11 through 20. How many did you rate as 1 or higher? And then put that number somewhere on the side of your sheet of paper. Okay. And then the final step, you might have to use your computer or phone calculator for this one. I apologize for the math. Then I would like for you to do a little division and divide your positive emotions count by the negative emotions count. Okay. So numerator divided by denominator, which will then result in your what we call the positivity ratio. Okay. It should range somewhere between 0 to even as high as 10. Okay, so save your positivity ratio, write that somewhere on your piece of paper. And I'll explain what that means in the next slide, okay? All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. You can also visit that survey on positivityratio.com. It's a validated scientific instrument that was developed by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson and that we use also in our research. So let's talk about your score. According to Barbara Fredrickson, you need to follow what we call the 3-to-1 ratio. 3 positive emotions for every negative emotion is the minimum requirement for what we would expect for someone to stay happy and healthy, both psychologically and physically. Okay, so for those of you who have a positivity ratio score of 3.0 or higher, so 3.0 or higher, that's what we consider flourishing. Flourishing people are the ones who are doing really well, are the ones who are likely to stay healthy, to stay happy, and to be flourishing and to be successful in life. So you always want to score an average of 3.0 or higher on your positivity ratio. Okay. So a 3.0 or higher basically means you have a 3-to-1 ratio between your experiences of positive emotions 3 times over the one negative emotion that you experience on average. Okay. For many people, about 80% of the general population will be scoring between 1.0 and 2.9. If your score is between 1.0 and 2.9, you're considered as languishing. It means that you are, in terms of your happiness and healthiness, it means that you are plateauing, not going up, just plateauing, or maybe even slightly going down. Okay, about 80% of the general population are here. These are the kind of people who feel like life could be better. They feel like they want more in life. They feel like they're not going anywhere. They might be feeling a little bit of hopelessness. So they always see the grass is greener on the other side, always yearning for more. Okay. On the other hand, if you are scoring below 1.0, so between 0 and 1.0 as your positivity ratio, you would be then considered as depressed or at risk of depression. If your positivity score is less than 1.0, it means that the negative emotions that you experience in life are outnumbering the positive emotions. So it means that at least for the last 24 hours, or perhaps on average, it means that you're always living in a cloud of negativity. And if it's something that you experience chronically for long periods of time, just like now with months and months of COVID and lockdowns and unemployment and other challenges, it could place people at increased risk of developing anxiety and depression problems as a result of the chronic stress and the chronic negativity. Okay. So our goal is to always try to be at least 3 positive emotional experiences for every negative. We want to score at least 3.0. Okay. So 80% of Americans in general population will be in the languishing category between 1.0 and 2.9. It is possible to get a perfect score at 10.0, but very, very rarely to score at 10.0, meaning that you experience 10 positive emotions for every single negative one. Barbara Fredrickson actually believes that it's near impossible to score a perfect 10.0. And if you do score a perfect 10.0, this might actually be a marker, an indicator for a mental health problem. To not experience any negativity might actually be a mental health problem. Okay. So why do we need 3 positive emotional experiences for every negative one? Unfortunately, negativity is heavy, negativity cuts deep, negativity scars and will cut. And these are the things that last for a long time. So, for every negative emotion that we feel, unfortunately, we have to balance it with at least 3 positive emotions. So, life is unfair. We learn a lot of lessons from negativity, but in order to overpower it and to maintain health, we have to have a 3.0 or higher ratio. Okay. And so the good news is our emotions change all the time throughout the days. The last 24 hours might be a very unique day for you. And so the recommendation is to do this test every day for at least 2 weeks, and then get an average of your positivity ratio score over the last 2 weeks. That's then going to give you a much better picture for how you are generally on average. And your goal again is to score 3.0 or higher, so at least a 3-to-1 ratio between positive and negative emotions. Okay. Experiencing positive emotions could be something very simple, again, as I said in the last slides. So, for example, if you think about these positive and negative terms right here, think about what you normally do in your daily routine as an individual, with your family, with your schools and your communities, with your faith organizations. What are the things that you can do and build into your schedule, especially now that we're locked at home? What are the things that we can do at home or in your community, socially distancing, of course, or maybe even in your school if you're still reporting to school? What are some things that you can do in your daily schedule, some things that you can do and change at home, at your work, in school, at your community organizations, your faith organizations. What are the things that we can do so that we can experience positive emotions like these more often? Some of them can be natural, some of them can be built in. You go call your friends and family. We can't see them in person yet, but you can call them on your phone. You can Zoom or Skype with them, see them on Google Hangouts. Make time to see them, see the people that you love, that make you happy, that make you feel these things. Pay attention to positive news, not only on the negative news. And so try to design a schedule in your daily life so you're experiencing these things all the time, either naturally or something that you force into your life routine and your life schedule. Okay. And also think about the negative emotions that you're feeling throughout the day, each day, especially now with all of the challenges related to the COVID pandemic, and figure out what are the things that we are experiencing and that we are facing throughout the days, and what can we do to minimize them, to avoid them, or at least not be so affected by them. Okay, and so I'll show you some recommendations on how we can do that in the later slides. Okay, so again, the goal is make sure to get at least 3 positive emotions for every negative one. Okay, and you can take that test every day and get that average over the last 2 weeks to get a general average for how you are normally. If you don't like doing the test on pencil and paper, again, you can visit this website at positivityratio.com, and you can click on the tab, take the test, and you'll see an online version of the PDF test that I showed you a moment ago. So you can plug in your answers here on how you rate these emotions, and you'll see that they've mixed it up between the positive and the negative emotional lines. At the very bottom, you can click calculate. It's going to show your score, just like here on this little window on the right. And it's going to show you an interpretation for what your score means. The great thing about this online tool is it's also going to allow you to create your own account. And so once you create an account, it's going to save all of your scores. So again, I recommend that you do this every day. Get at least enough daily scores for at least 2 weeks. And so you can get a really good average for how you are normally. And then you can try to make changes in your life, at your home, in your school, at your workplace, in your community, so you can build in more opportunities to experience positive emotions. Okay. So you've heard me say this already numerous times. I would love for you to just tattoo this in your memory, in your brain. And as you go through your life, as you go through your days, always think about maximizing the positive emotions, increasing the emotional positive experiences, and minimizing the negative ones. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of studies that we did when I used to be a PhD student all the way up to now. What we measured was about 200 college students in Texas, and we looked at their experiences of emotions. And we found out, long story short, that when you experience high levels of positive emotions, again, getting at least 3.0 or higher on your positivity ratio score, you're more likely to do what we call adaptive coping strategies. These are the healthy coping strategies that you can use against stress, versus maladaptive coping, the ones that are normally harmful or can be hurtful long term. And so what this diagram is really wanting to show to you is when you are experiencing higher levels of positive emotions, you're more likely to do adaptive, less likely to do maladaptive, and I'll explain a list of what they are in the next slide. When you are more likely to do adaptive coping strategies, you become more resilient. And when you are more resilient, you become more protected from stress. So even if you have increased experiences of stress and chronic stress, you're less likely to develop anxiety and depression disorders. Okay. Sorry, that was a bit of a complicated graph there. Excuse me. And so what we realized was when people are scoring 3.0 or higher in the flourishing category, they're more likely to do these adaptive coping strategies against stress. So active coping is when you are facing a problem, that's when you decide to tackle the problem and deal with it right away, head on. Okay. Sometimes the problem might be a lot bigger than us. For example, not being able to go to school or not being able to go to work. It's not something that we can fix right away in front of us. And so what we need to instead do is take a step back, go home, maybe sleep over it, talk with your friends and families, and plan. What can you do to deal with these problems that you are facing now? Once you have a good plan and you are ready to tackle the problem, then that's when you can go on and face that problem and address it directly. Sometimes, just like with the COVID crisis, it's a very big problem that is beyond our control. The next best thing that we can do that's adaptive is acceptance. We just have to accept the reality that, we have to live with this pandemic, and we might have to live with this pandemic until we have a vaccine, until we have some effective solutions that's going to allow us to return to normal. There are some people who are not ready to accept it, and what happens is they are then experiencing chronic levels of stress and anxiety because they're always worrying about COVID and all the problems related to COVID. And the best thing that we can do right now, really, because it's so big beyond our control, is to just accept the reality of the situation and then figure out what else can we do that would be much more productive. Positive reframing is trying to look at the brighter side of things. In the very beginnings of the pandemic, I think a lot of people were using positive reframing, like, okay, now we are stuck at home, we're locked down, we can't go out and do anything, but it's allowing us to reflect and realize the important things in life and spend more time with our friends and family. So try to look at the brighter side of things and try to look for the lessons and the opportunities amid all of these challenges and problems. One thing that's really important for us, especially now with the pandemic, is emotional support, especially now that we are highly stressed and anxious, feeling a variety of negative emotions. It's very important, especially because we're social creatures, to get emotional support from everybody else, that it's okay not to be okay. And we should be tapping on our social network, call and Zoom or Google Hangout with your friends, your families, your neighbors, and just talk about all of the experiences that you are going through, and get that emotional support from our loved ones, which is really important for us to feel normal, that this is okay to feel down and that we are all in this together. Okay. Instrumental support is also really important. That's the tangible types of resources that we need to be able to maintain our life and our happiness. So, for example, with the COVID crisis, with people becoming unemployed, people are struggling to be able to afford paying their bills, buying food, being able to afford school supplies and equipment so that we can teach and learn online. So it's very important for us to really help each other. If you have friends, family members, neighbors who might need devices, equipment, they might need some money, they might need transportation or any kind of assistance. Hopefully, our friends, our families, our neighbors, community members, faith organizations, and the government agencies are providing the instruments that we need so that we can carry on with our lives even through this crisis. I know, especially with CHED and the school systems, being able to be fully online is very challenging. And so let's try to help each other as much as we can, so we can equip both the faculty, the teachers, the staff, the students, and the families with the computer equipment, the internet, the data services that we need, so that we can continue on and not miss out on being able to go to school and being able to go to work, at least for this semester or even for the next coming year. And then lastly is humor. Sometimes we can just laugh about our problems. Humor can be very important because when we are faced with really big problems, just like COVID, or any other problems that we're facing in the Philippines, in the US, or even all over the world, being able to laugh a little bit at the problems will help make us feel as if the problem is smaller, so that we're much more ready to tackle it and deal with it, as opposed to not being able to laugh at it, and we're instead going to feel overwhelmed and intimidated by that problem, which will only increase our stress and anxiety. Okay, so that was a long explanation, but essentially, when people are flourishing, when you are scoring 3.0 or higher in your positivity ratio, you naturally are smarter, are wiser, and are more likely to use these adaptive coping strategies that's going to make you be more resilient and more protected against stress and more protected against developing anxiety, depression, and other mental health problems. Okay. Whoop. So very important again, focus on your positive emotions, keep that score high, build that into your daily routine so that you're more likely to do adaptive coping strategies that's going to make you resilient, protected from stress, and protected from developing mental health problems like anxiety and depression disorder. On the other hand, if you are scoring below 3.0, certainly when you're scoring below 1.0, when you are depressive, you're more likely to use what we call maladaptive strategies that might feel good at that moment, but long term, they can be very harmful. Like self distraction is sort of like instead of dealing with the problem, maybe you're just going to watch TV or do chores and not address the problem that's facing you. It's important to be able to solve our problems right then and there and not let it grow. Another thing that we can do is self blame. We're just blaming ourselves, attacking ourselves for not being able to deal with the problem. Obviously, that's very harmful. Venting is taking it out on others, blaming others. Behavioral disengagement is just a big word for giving up. Denial is the opposite of acceptance. And then, of course, substance use, abuse, alcohol, drugs that sometimes people will turn to try to numb themselves and escape their problems. So, obviously, maladaptive coping strategies are unhealthy and you don't want to do them. And so, one thing that you can do again naturally, if you are increasing your positive emotional experiences, you're naturally just more likely to do adaptive, less likely to do maladaptive. So focus again on increasing your positivity score, and then the chain reaction will work positively and healthily for you, both psychologically and physically. Okay. Another study that we did was to compare the scores between the flourishing group scoring 3.0 or higher on the positivity ratio, the languishing group scoring between 1.0 and 2.9, and then the depressed group scoring less than 1.0. Okay, so you'll see here on stress, anxiety, and depression, the green group, the flourishing group, is scoring lower on stress, anxiety, depression. And then you'll see the languishing group scoring a bit higher on stress, anxiety, depression. And then the depressed groups, those scoring below 1.0, these are the folks that are scoring very high on stress, highest on anxiety, and highest on depressive symptoms. The interesting thing about this study is that all of them were experiencing the same type of stress. But the people who are flourishing are reporting less of it because they're seeing the world in much more, in a way, a better perspective. They don't rate it as a big problem. However, for people who are languishing or depressed, scoring below 2.9 and below 1.0 on positivity ratio, even if the stress is small, they had a tendency of magnifying the problem, making it a lot bigger than it really was. And so it increases their stress, it increases their anxiety, and it increases their depression, and increases their chances of developing mental health as well as physical health problems. Okay, so it's important to score at least 3.0 or higher for our health and the way we see the world. Lastly, our third study that I'll share with you today is on work engagement. It's a very big target of organizations nowadays. They want employees and students who are work engaged, and these are students and employees who are vigorous, who are dedicated, and are absorbed in their work. And so what that means is when people, workers and students, when you are work engaged, it means you show vigor. Vigor means that you are excited to go to work and excited to go to school. You're looking forward to the day because you are wanting to see your friends and do good work. Okay. People who are work engaged are also dedicated, meaning that they are willing to go above and beyond to reach their goals. And then the last part of work engagement is the characteristic of absorption. These are the kind of people who love going to school and love going to work so much that when they show up to work or school at 8 in the morning, time just goes by so quickly because they've loved what they were doing throughout the day. So a work engaged student and a work engaged employee are going to be much more successful at what it is that they're doing. So not only are you successful individually, but you're also going to be successful organizationally as a whole education or employer system. And so in this study, we looked at work meaningfulness, which is really important, supervisor support, stress, and positive emotions. And when we ran the analysis, what we found out, excuse me, was that obviously it's very important to know the meaning of your work. Why do you go to school? Why do you go to work and be a teacher? It's because you want to develop and grow and have the knowledge and the skills to be able to reach your goals in the future. We also saw that stress is really important. We want to minimize stress at the workplace, at school, so that you can be more work engaged. And we also want to increase positive emotions. But we also found out that supervisor support is very important because supervisor support or even teacher support has a direct relationship with how much positive emotions we experience in our daily experiences. And so what this really means is for teachers, for principals, for CHED officials, think about and make sure to set up the school system so that students are experiencing more positive emotions than negative ones, so that they will become more engaged students and more successful students. And the same thing can be said for teachers. Make sure that the teachers are in a workplace, in the school, in the classroom, where they have all of the tools, the resources, and the support they need so that they can be very good at their jobs, so that they can be very happy, which will then contribute to student success and happiness. Okay, so there's a lot of pressure on students and the bosses to make sure that we create environments that will be promotive of positive emotions rather than the negative emotions. Okay, excuse me. So now that we know all of that, how can we increase our positivity? And I've already made some recommendations along the previous slides. And again, focus on the 3-to-1 ratio. Try to make sure that you end your days with 3 positive emotional experiences than the negative ones, because these are the active ingredients to fighting stress so that you can be stronger, happier, and healthier, both psychologically, mentally, and physically. So some recommendations from Barbara Fredrickson to decrease negativity. Again, decrease that denominator. It's not easy to do, so practice requires it requires a lot of practice before it becomes a natural part of your life. So try to dispute negative thinking. Try not to focus on the negativity and focus instead on the positivity. Reframe it. Try not to, again, think about it too much. Get away from the negative cloud and look at the positive whenever possible. Be more mindful. Oftentimes it's in our mind. Sometimes the problem is not that big and it could be very small. So when it's a smaller problem, then we don't have to be so affected by it and so overwhelmed and intimidated by that problem. Think about your daily experiences. What are your, what we call the negativity landmines? So for example, nowadays, when you turn on the TV, watch the news, or be out on social media, on Facebook, all day long, we are bombarded by negative news, the things that upset us, the increasing rates of COVID, all of the fighting amongst our political officials, amongst our, maybe even our community members, our family members. Try to figure out what are these negativity landmines and try to minimize those experiences. So for me, one of my major sources of the negativity landmines is just going on Facebook or watching the news because it is filled mostly with just negative news that are very upsetting. So try not to put so much time and attention to that because you end up ruminating in negative emotions. a social media diet, as I've said. Try to put in some positive in your media. Um, try to escape gossip and sarcasm, and try to minimize and avoid having to deal with negative people. Especially nowadays, people are on fight or flight mode. Everybody is just fighting. And so we need to, instead of fighting, we need to figure out how we can help each other, especially through this COVID crisis. We have to be able to help each other out, and not dedicate any energy and any time with fighting or dealing with negative people. Okay. So these are some recommendations from Barbara Fredrickson on how we can minimize our negative emotional experiences. On the other hand, we can experience or increase our positivity through these suggestions from Barbara Fredrickson's book. Be sincere, actually mean what you say to people, be genuine. Try to, again, positively reframe what you see and how you see the world. Savor the goodness. Whenever good things happen, spend a lot of time and appreciate that. Okay, count your blessings. Be grateful for the little things, the little help that we get from our friends and family and our community members. And again, similar to counting your blessing, kindness counts. Let's help each other out. When we help people, we feel good. When other people help us, we feel good. So let's be kind to each other. Let's help each other. And let's not only help each other instrumentally, but help each other raise our scores so that our positivity ratios are at least 3.0 or higher. Okay. Follow your passions, especially for those students. Dream positively about your future. COVID is very difficult right now, but it's not forever. As soon as we find a vaccine, an effective solution to this, we can go back to normal. And hopefully that's going to be soon. And we can look back and hopefully even be able to laugh about it. So dream about your future positively so that you can experience positive emotions now rather than the negative ones. Focus on your strengths, on what you can do. Don't focus on your negatives or your weaknesses. And very importantly, especially nowadays, especially now because we are locked down and disconnected from our families and friends, thankfully, because of technology and internet and our devices, being able to connect with our loved ones and our friends are very easy now. Something as simple as FaceTime, as Zoom, Google Hangouts, using the internet and our devices to our advantage to continue connecting with others, not necessarily physically face to face, but at least we can talk to each other and support each other technologically. Okay, spend a lot of time with the good people that make you feel good and positive. And again, be open-minded and open-hearted. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. It's okay to be not okay. Be forgiving to yourself, be forgiving to others. And again, help yourself and help each other promote positive emotions rather than negative ones. Okay, and we have a lot of control when it comes to the experiences that we feel day to day. And I'm almost done here. Lastly, again, think about, not necessarily now, you can think about it later on after this and have this conversation with your family, with your friends, with your classmates, and with your colleagues at work. How can we make our daily lives and where we live, work, learn, and play, how can we make them healthier and happier places? How can we make sure that our homes, that our schools, our workplaces, our faith organizations, our community agencies, our government agencies, what can we change both as people and what can we change about the environment so that it's easier for all of us to feel positive emotions rather than the negative ones? So again, help each other get at least 3.0, help ourselves, help others to flourish rather than languish or rather than be depressed. It's easier said than done, but it's very possible. It's just like learning how to ride a bike. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes a part of your new life. So the more practice you have, the more likely you change as a new human being. You become a more positive person. It makes it a lot easier for you to feel positive emotions and to stay flourishing. Excuse me. Having said that, that's really all I have to present and share with you today. Thank you again for the opportunity to share a little bit of my work. And hopefully, some of my suggestions about the 3-to-1 ratio and the coping strategies that I've presented and shared with you will be helpful in helping you maintain your happiness and healthiness through this COVID crisis. I'm certainly there with you, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to go back to the Philippines and visit with you all sooner than later. So again, thank you, everybody, and I'll open it up now to you all for any questions.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Christian Gloria, for the very nice presentation, as well as sharing the best idea on how to become happy, healthy, and stronger. So Dr. Gloria shared to us that there's only one key to that: minimizing the positive and minimizing the negative, so that we can be always at least have a ratio of 3:1, and much better if we can increase this to a perfect one. Yeah. Pero,
Yes, sir.
but it is also okay to be not to be okay.
Yes,
At times,
absolutely.
at times it's not
It's
also
okay.
not
It's
to be
okay.
okay.
It's okay not to be okay,
Okay.
especially now. But the
Mhm.
important thing is not to be in that mindset for a very long time. Uh, so try to be as positive as possible so that we don't end up being at risk for developing anxiety or depression disorder. But yes, you're right. It is okay not to be okay. And that's actually very normal, especially now through this pandemic.
Yes. Yeah. Going into our open forum. So let us start with one question here that is coming from the VSU Joel Ray Acob. Sir, when do we consider denial and its extent of occurrence as maladaptive coping? Denial as a first inclusion of Rose grieving is necessary to complete the process. Please enlighten us. Thank you. Sir, please unmute the mic, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you for that great question. Denial, again, is considered a maladaptive strategy for coping. It might feel good at the moment. Sometimes we just have to get away from whatever it is that has stressed us or has threatened us. Like, for example, it might be a sickness or a death in the family. It's very natural for us to deny it, to feel that it's not true. But we don't want to be in that mindset for very long, because denying the problem is not going to make it go away. So over time, hopefully sooner than later, instead of denial, we need to be able to move on to acceptance and being able to accept the reality of the situation. Being able to accept that maybe a family member had gotten sick, maybe accepting that unfortunately a family member passed away. Uh, Being able to accept is one of the first steps that we need to be able to accept within ourselves so that we can move on and be able to address and deal with that problem.
Sir, thank you, sir. Another question here, sir, or maybe this is a request from RTR College of Nursing. Hi, Sir Christian. I hope we can have a copy of your slides, especially the tool used questions, to know if the patients are close to depressions or having positive emotions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will email my PowerPoint slides as well as the instrument to, I've been emailing with Dr. Gabino Petilos as well as Father Nicolo Florencio. And so I'll email them the slides as well as the instrument so that they can share that with you. And also, if you are unable to get an email from them, please feel free to get in touch with me. You can just email me at cgloria, so that's C for Christian, cgloria@hpu.edu. So send me an email and I will be more than happy to share it with you. Another something easy to remember, I'll type it in the chat box. you can just visit christiangloria.com. It's going to take you to my faculty biography, the website, and you're going to see my email and even my phone number. And so you're welcome to email or even call me anytime. And I would be happy to send to you the slides, the instrument, and any other articles that you might be interested in. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Maybe you can also request from you, sir, to send it to CHED Region 8 through Dr. Petelos, so that it can be shared to all of us easily, rather
Sure, I
than
will.
individually, sir.
Thank you.
Okay,
I will do that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Another question from V issue, Miss Jonah Britt. Good afternoon, sir. What can you say about toxic positivity? It was raised. It was raised in webinars attended by counselors that it's not scientific.
Thank you for that great question. Toxic positivity is certainly coming up a lot lately. It's very similar to the 10.0 score that I mentioned in the middle of my slides. Toxic positivity is not productive. You don't want to only focus so much on the positivity that you forget the reality that the world can be a negative place. Our research, as well as the research by Barbara Fredrickson, actually acknowledge that it's important to experience stress. It's important to feel negative emotions because it helps us feel grounded with reality. The world is not perfect, especially nowadays. And so we have to acknowledge that it is a stressful time in our lives, not only during COVID, but even before or after it. And it's healthy to feel negative emotions. We have to be able to feel all of the 20 items that I showed you on that instrument. And so when something bad happens, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be afraid. And that's part of the human experience. And so certainly toxic positivity can be like something bad happens, but then you don't acknowledge that negativity. It's important to feel it. And so yes, we don't want to get lost into the area of toxic positivity because it's unhealthy.
Okay, thank you,
you.
sir. From the Western Leyte Colleges of Ormoc, sir, Ferdinand Olorvida. As care workers, how can we prevent compassion fatigue?
Wow, that's such a great question. Not only compassion fatigue, but fatigue not only mentally, psychologically, emotionally, but even physically. I'm actually proposing to do work with University of San Agustin at Iloilo. I had been working with some psychologists and psychiatrists there, and we are proposing to study and follow healthcare workers and frontliners so we can monitor their mental health, including compassion fatigue, amongst other things. I think the best recommendation I can share with you regarding how to prevent compassion fatigue or any kind of fatigue is to make sure that we practice self-care. Don't forget to rest. Don't forget to tell your coworkers to rest. It's easy to just be burned out because there's so much to do and there's so many problems to deal with. The problems will not always go away, so you have to make time for yourself and for your self-care. You can deal with other problems later, but it's kind of like this saying that you have to put the mask on you first and take care of yourself before you can take care of others. And so whenever you feel fatigued, and sometimes we're blind to ourselves, and so if you see that on others, and tell your friends and family that if they see that on you, to let them know, hey, you need to rest and take some time for yourself. Like for example, today at my university, I'm known as a workaholic. I work all the time. I had LASIK eye surgery about 4 days ago, and I'm still staring at computer screens all day long. So I had to, my associate dean had to go to my office this afternoon, and she told me, Christian, I'm requiring you to go home now and rest, because she knows that I've been working 12-hour days, staring at the computer screen all day long. and I forget to take care of myself. So, but thankfully, I have others who are there to remind me and even require me to just turn off the computer, go home, and get some rest. So that's, I think, the best recommendation I have to prevent not only compassion fatigue, but also prevent all sorts of exhaustion and burnout amongst all of us, especially our frontline workers.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. We have another question here from Palompon Institute of Technology, Leo Roswald Tugonon. Being okay, even if not okay, is a denial. What about the consequence of such denial? Would it not be stressful at the end?
So that's very similar to toxic positivity, right? You can't say you're okay if you're not okay. That's one of the recommendations of Dr. Barbara Fredrickson in her suggestions for how to maintain positivity. It's to be sincere and to be genuine. If you're not okay, you're not okay. Don't tell yourself, don't tell others that you're okay. It's perfectly okay. It's perfectly normal to not be okay and to struggle and be able to acknowledge that for yourself as well as for other people. Um, Faking your happiness certainly is not only stressful and hurtful for you, but it can also be harmful to other people because you're not being sincere or being genuine. So again, be sincere and genuine. If you're not okay, that's okay. And just acknowledge that and try to think positively in figuring out how you can address your problems and so that you can genuinely be okay sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. By the way, we are on live stream at FB, Facebook, as well as
Mhm.
YouTube. So we have also audience there. Maybe they have also questions to be raised to our speaker this afternoon. So we'd like to ask Ma'am Kathy for the Facebook or for our audience questions through the Facebook.
Hi, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm taking over for Ma'am Kathy.
Yes, ma'am,
Hello,
Erlet.
yeah.
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes. Good afternoon. It's
Good afternoon po.
around 3:30 PI time, Dr. Gloria.
Mm.
Okay. So we only have positive comments for you,
Thank you.
and these are thank you. So many thank yous. So much for this, Dr. Gloria. This is really informative and very relevant. Great presentation, good presentation, nice presentation, great. And another one from Kiana. Thank you for this, Dr. Gloria. This motivates me. From Cyril, nice presentation, Sir Christian. Thank you so much for this, really helpful. From Is This Lipan? It gave me a lot of knowledge. From Raulito, sir, your talk is great. Your talk is great. It's a great help for us. And the last but not the least, we have thank you for the info, Dr. Gloria. It's really helpful for everyone, for yourself. So that's
Thank you
it.
very much. That brings me a lot of positive emotions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Erlet. From the YouTube live, we have questions here from Rocky Sikogo. Sir, when is the best time to touch the person who's suffering from depression?
Thank you
When
for the
is the best
question.
time? Yeah.
The best time is as soon as possible. When somebody is struggling with depression, anxiety, or even other forms of mental health problems, or even just negative emotions, provide help and social support as soon as possible. There's never a wrong time to do it. Sometimes people don't even realize, and so you have to be that friend, that family member, that classmate, that colleague to make it okay for them to even talk about it. And so you might just be like, "Hi, I see that you might not be okay. What is it that I can do to help you? They want to talk about it." And sometimes that's all it takes to give someone an opportunity to share their experiences, to feel that it's okay not to be okay, and be not only be able to be that ear, but also help them find the solutions or the resources that they might need to help them with whatever it is that they're struggling with. So the best time is as soon as possible, and as soon as they allow you to give them that help that they need.
So once we sense that there is somebody on that stage, so we have to rescue immediately, right, Dr. Gloria?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. From Raulito Trinidad, what coping mechanisms can you suggest if one is severely suffering from anxiety and depression?
For severe suffering of anxiety and depression, I think the one thing I would recommend, especially if you see this from your friends or family members, is to contact for example, the crisis hotline from the Department of Health or even the National Mental Health Crisis. I'm not sure if there's a local agency in your community that they can call so that they can be in contact with a psychologist, a counselor, or a psychiatrist who will be able to provide them that professional service to really help them overcome and address any kind of severe levels of anxiety and depression. So, as a friend, as a family member, as a colleague, the best thing that we can do is recognize that they might need help and help them find the resources, the psychologists, psychiatrists, or the counselors who they can talk to and be able to really process that. And so, for us, the regular family members, we don't have to be the problem solvers. We don't have to be the psychiatrists or psychologists. And thankfully, with the new mental health law in the Philippines and the including the mental health services with the healthcare system, hopefully that's becoming much more available. I know the truth that psychologists and psychiatrists are limited in the Philippines, especially in certain communities like in Tacloban. But thankfully, with technology, with Zoom and Skype and Google Hangout, uh, I do know that the psychologists and the psychiatrists that I work with across the Philippines, that they can connect and be available to people through telemedicine. I'm helping them develop that. And so hopefully, regardless of where you are, even if you don't have a psychologist, a counselor, or a psychiatrist in your local community, hopefully we'll be able to connect you with them virtually or through the phone.
Yes. I think this question of Kiana Marie Daconos is related to the previous question. Dr. Gloria, how can we comfort a person who's suffering anxiety and depression?
I think the first thing that we can do as a friend or as a family member or as a community member is to help them feel that it's okay to talk about it. Especially in the Philippines, mental health problems and any kind of mental health struggles are stigmatized. We don't want to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. We feel or we believe that if somebody has a mental health problems, that it's a moral issue or that it's something else aside from an actual legitimate health issue. So again, similar to my answer earlier, make them feel that it's okay to talk about it, and then help them understand and process and connect them to the resources that they may need to be able to address the problem effectively. So just have an open ear, an open heart, an open arm, give them a hug, and tell them that it's okay to talk about these problems and issues.
Thank you, sir. One more question, I think, from YouTube. Is pretending to be happy or self-denial contribute to future depression?
This seems to be a common question today. It's actually the whole toxic positivity or insincere positivity is something that I hear lately a lot. So the question of is pretending to be happy or in self-denial unhealthy or can contribute to future depression? And the simple answer is yes. Again, like with Barbara Fredrickson's research and her recommendation, it's so important to be sincere and to be genuine. It's much healthier to genuinely feel not okay and to feel unhappy. Process and feel that feeling, acknowledge the reality and the legitimacy of it, and then let's look at real solutions on how we can move you from unhappiness to happiness. Faking it, I think Filipinos, and I'm guilty of this all the time, that oftentimes when people ask us, are you okay? Instead of saying, oh, I'm not okay, I have problems, it's so much easier to just say, oh, I'm okay, and just fake a smile.
Yes.
Being insincere, faking a smile, we know the truth deep down inside, and we're struggling with it inside. So we need to be okay expressing that, and help each other be okay with expressing that with each other. So be sincere for sure.
Well, I think one more question, sir. We have from SSU or Samar State University, Misty Douglas. Hi, sir. Thank you. I have question two. I want to know if there is a connection if our mental health can affect our too.
Could you repeat that, sir?
I want to know if there is a connection if our mental health can affect our physical health too.
Absolutely. In the last 10, 20 years, there's been a lot of research in stress and mental health problems, and how that is actually strongly correlated with physical health problems. For example, chronic stress is not only related to depression and anxiety disorders, but that's also related to developing cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, immunity disorders. What happens is when we're chronically stressed, we become anxious and depressed. When you're anxious, depressed, and mentally ill, you are likely not going to practice healthy behavior. You're likely not going to eat healthy, exercise, meet with your friends and family, practice healthy behaviors that would then lead to development of physical health problems. So the simple answer to that is yes, stress, mental health problems are strongly related to development of physical health problems, particularly heart disease.
Okay, all right. I think those are. Are there some questions from the Facebook or YouTube and Zoom? Okay, I think this is one. Another one from College of Maasin, I guess. Valerie Cinco. So with self-care, sir, there are no hard and fast rules, right? Social media is very influential. I see that most people are merely conforming, and by doing that, they become more stressed. People nowadays have if FOMO, fear of missing out. Any thoughts on this? Thanks.
Fear of missing out and FOMO is a trending problem, especially for our generations Z and maybe even the millennials. Thanks to social media, it's always so easy now to compare ourselves with other people that look like they have better, happier lives than us. Remember, I think all of us, to some extent, are guilty of it. That we only tend to paint the best pictures of ourselves on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. We only like to show the good news, or even maybe fake our happiness. So it's very important that we, like you said, don't fall into sort of the trap of just looking at all of the social media influencers, the celebrities, the content creators that seem to live perfect lives. We don't want to be in the habit of always comparing ourselves to others. And so, just like with Barbara Fredrickson's recommendation, we have to assess our media diet. Let's look at role models and influencers who make us feel good about ourselves, who are genuine. It's okay once in a while to look at influencers who seem to live a perfect life, but let's not only focus on that, because that's not the only way to live a happy and healthy life.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Is cabin fever synonymous with depression?
Oh, the cabin fever synonymous with
Cabin
depression.
fever.
Um, cabin fever, just feeling locked in, not being able to go out, socialize, meet your friends and family, it's not the same as depression, but feeling cabin fever, feeling the stress and the worries and the boredom related to cabin fever surely can contribute to depression. And so we want to avoid, in one way, the way I understand it is, cabin fever might be the source, and feelings of sadness, boredom, and later on depression is sort of the outcome. So we want to make sure we are not experiencing cabin fever. So figure out what can we do at home, what can we do in school, so that you're still connected with your friends and the outside world. So you're not feeling uh, that cabin fever, like you're stuck in a hole all day long for long periods of time. I think it's still okay to go out in your communities, to go out in your neighborhood, walk around the block, enjoy nature, just socially distance, and not necessarily be locked in a room all day long for long periods of time to prevent the cabin fever.
Hello, sir. From the Facebook, have you authored books? How can we access them?
I'm working on a book right now. Always so busy, so I can never seem to finish it. I have published articles, and so if you visit my website at christiangloria.com, you'll see my articles there that I've published over the last, I think, 10, 15 years. The articles there are not readily available, but if you want to email me, I can email you the full text articles so you can read them. Unfortunately, they are scientific articles, and so it's a bit boring to read. But I am writing. I'm working on writing a book right now in terms of holistic wellness, both mind and body health. And so hopefully I'll be able to finish that by the end of the year. And so just keep in touch with me, and hopefully I'll be able to share with you a copy of that when it's written and finished. Thank you for asking.
Maybe this is the last question, sir, from YouTube.
Sure.
How easy it is to get out from depression?
It depends on what you mean by depression. So there's just sometimes a misconception of an acute form of sadness, of the emotional depression that we feel as a result of some negative experience. That's something that we can get over very quickly if we are experiencing positive emotions to replace that emotional state. When we're talking about a clinical uh, diagnosed depression disorder, that kind of problem has been developing for a very long time. And so getting out of that depressive disorder, that mood disorder, can take longer and might require the help from a psychologist, a counselor, or a psychiatrist. There are different kinds of strategies and therapies that somebody can use to get out of depression, but it really depends on how short or how long, how acute or how chronic you have been struggling with it. So if you catch it early, if your family members catch it early, then it'll be an easier, quicker process. But if it's something that you've been struggling with for a long time, then unfortunately it might take a long time, but it's not impossible. You just need to connect with the right resources and the healthcare providers to provide for you what you need, the therapies and the strategies to be able to successfully get out from it.
Well, thank you so much, sir. That's great. I think there are no more questions from Zoom, from FB, and from YouTube. But if you have to read all these comments from our audience from the three platforms, we are all in unison. Thank you so much for that great presentation, Dr. Gloria. And also, we'd like to thank also for the CHED Region 8 for organizing this webinar on mental health. And also, we learned a lot from this. I am not a psychologist, Dr. Gloria, but I learned a lot that this is the technique to make life very happy and very simple. Always think or maximize positivity rather than that negativity. So maximize the positive, minimize the negative. So with this, we'd like to call in again Dr. Gabino Pipitilos to award the digital certificate to our resource person.
Thank you very much.
Sir, perhaps before we award the digital certificate, may we request Sir Christian to raffle his honorarium to students?
I see. I forgot, sir. I see. I forgot that one.
Yes, I think it's at 20,000 pesos, right? For a lucky student.
Noreen, i-flash daw ako ang screen.
Okay.
Noreen will flash this on the screen the names of students, and perhaps, sir, you could just mention the name so we can
Just
record
pick
it.
Okay.
Okay. Noreen, flash. Noreen is preparing to flash the names of students.
Okay. So do I select from the 12 or are there more? Oh, okay.
There are more. I think. Noreen, how many?
40.
40
Okay.
from 40 students, sir.
So before I started the lecture today, I already made a decision, and thankfully it's numbered. I was born on December 24th, and so I
Yes.
told myself I'll choose number 24.
Number 24 is
24.
chosen.
Congratulations,
Noreen.
Jessa Flores.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
We will notify the students, sir, and we will facilitate the release of 2 million pesos for her. Thank you so much, sir, for your generosity.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been so great to meet you all, and I hope that I'll be able to visit you in person soon.
Sure, sir.
I was in Tacloban a year and a half ago. I should have just kept driving down the island to see you all in Maasin.
Okay, so we now award the digital certificate, Noreen. So may I read the certificate of appreciation? Republic of the Philippines, Office of the President, Commission on Higher Education, Regional Office 8, Athletic Road, Barangay 43B, Quarry District, Tacloban City, awards this certificate of appreciation to Dr. Christian T. Gloria in recognition of his expertise and invaluable service as a source speaker during the CHIDRO 8 webinar on flourishing through adversity. How can stress and emotional experience make us stronger? Conducted via digital platforms on August 19, 2020. Given this 19th day of August 2020 in Tacloban City, Leyte, Philippines. Signed, George M. Colorado, PhD, CESO 3, Director 4.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be able to present to you all today.
Okay, that's it. Sir, any announcements, sir?
Yeah.
For me?
No.
From Dr. Gabino, are there some announcements?
Yes, for the lucky student, the honorarium is actually 2,000 pesos. That's the generosity of our speaker who spent his time sharing his expertise to all of us. Thank you, sir. We hope to get in touch with you again in our future activities. So we hope you will be available again.
Yes, absolutely. It's my pleasure, and I would love to see you all sooner or later. And I will for sure keep in touch And I will let you know as soon as I find out the next time I'm able to visit the Philippines. I would love to stop by and meet everybody. Thank you again for the opportunity and the invitation. And I'm really looking forward to meeting you all sooner or later.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Take
sir.
care
Thank you.
and stay
Yes, sir.
healthy.
Dr. Glorias, again, thank you so much from the participants now for this webinar on mental health. So we know that you'll be coming back because you have a formula for a happy life, and you have only discussed to us the first component
right.
to that formula, which is a pleasant life. So we are still looking forward for that presentations of yours and sharing on the engaged life and the meaningful life to make our life happy. So again, a pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar hosted by the Chedro Regional Office 8. And thank you for Sir Gabi Petilos, Ma'am Erlet, and all of the staff, the technical staff of this webinar. Thank you, and thank you so much.
Salamat, aloha, and God bless.
God
Bye-bye.
bless you all. Thank you, sir. Okay. Tapos na.
Noreen, what's next?
Thank you, Sir Loreto.
Very welcome, Ma'am
Thank you so
Neighbor.
much, sir, for accommodating our request.
From neighbor.
Ma'am, yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. All the best. Okay, all the time, then, sir.
Thank you also to all the
Take
participants.
care.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Leave na kami.
Congratulations, Sir Petilos.
Congratulations to all of us.
My picture.
Hala. Noreen. Oh,
I know.
Neil. Picture.
Very class picture.
Sayang. Ikaw na lang pag-announce. Wala na pera.
If you are still around, please stay a while. We'll have a class picture. My
Overlook.
kid. Sige na. Picture na, Neil. OMG.
Hello, Sir Gabs.
Hi.
Matag-screenshot na ko kanina habang nag-awarding.
Okay. Thank you so much, Neil. Sige. Na-record mo niya lecture?
Yes, sir. Recorded.
Okay, thank you so much.
Pati
Thank you,
Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
You may leave now.
Sige, leave na.
Screenshot na ko kanina during the
Okay.
presentation. Thank you. Bye.